Hello everyone, this is Charlotte and this is a podcast called Chatting in Cars. It's where I pick out random topics and talk about them in length on my way to work or the way back from work. We talk about a lot of topics and some of them are very sensitive, hence the disclaimer at the start of the podcast. So if you're feeling a bit sensitive today, don't risk it, right? Take the day off, I don't know. You don't have to listen to this. It could be traumatic for you, I don't know. I've got a lot of PTS myself, so yeah, I don't want to relive that crap. Also, I do swear a bit. I swear quite considerably. So if you're not feeling up to hearing me blasting someone whilst I'm driving, or I don't know, about a topic that we might be discussing at the time, possibly some ex, I suggest turn it off now. I know they've got a few people who just don't like the idea of anyone swearing, let alone a lady swearing, and I swear profusely. So change the channel if you don't want to hear it, okay? Alright, it's Wednesday, so I'm driving to work, hyper caffeinated. And the topic for today is childishness and being childlike. There is a difference, of course. I lean towards enjoying the idea of being childlike. I think everyone does, or most people do. We can't generalize, can we? No one seems to like people that are childish. There is a significant difference. One is more of a positive thing. It's like we want to have this illusion, I suppose, of innocence, where, you know, everything's positive and everything's okay and we're optimistic, really. It's got some kind of weird association with optimism, childlikeness. Childishness is seen as a negative thing, really, because, you know, you're seen as immature, you can't think for yourself, you don't want to be responsible or anything like that. So childish is generally, you know, shat on. I suppose that most people are both, aren't they? Because we've all got some elements where we're childish or childlike. I would hope so, we're childlike. People might live in denial about being childlike because, you don't want to be seen as an immature adult. Some people mesh the two, so you can't really define what the difference is. Ooh, 555. That's an angel number. Sorry. I'm seeing a lot of synchronicities lately. Triple numbers and angel numbers. That's a different podcast. Hopefully my twin flame's coming. So what are we hoping for? We want to, as a culture, maintain, I suppose, westernized culture, if you're going to generalize, that innocence is something to be promoted. We're all sort of tainted and tarnished. So we want the childlike approach to life. If we can, we're supposed to be promoting ways in which we can, you know, take on the innocence we once had in childhood. It's a softer side of life, I expect. Not for me. My childhood was not fun. And there's a lot of people that haven't had a fun childhood, but I assume it's coming from the standpoint that, you know, an idealized childhood. I'd like to do a survey at some point, see how many people actually did have a good childhood, how many people came from like a solid background and foundation, that loving, warm family that, you know, look after each other and they just want to hang out together all the fucking time. My people are not like that. I was not raised with those people. I don't know if you listen to the other podcasts, but, you know, my parents were abusive. My siblings I get along with for the most part. My brother I idolize. So, so that's my setup. I know when I got out of home, it was a bit bewildering to exist, basically. You didn't have anyone sitting there, you know, forcing you into situations and you're sort of just floating. So I had trouble around about when I was 19 and in my 20s, trying to figure out what to do and who I am and that sort of thing. So by the time I got to my mid-20s, I decided to give myself a second childhood, just basically because I know I didn't have the first one. My domestication started at 5, so as soon as you were initiated into the schooling system, you also started taking on the role of an adult. That meant acting as an adult, doing adult jobs, not going out and getting employed for it. It was essentially just being raised for servitude. So anything like, you know, waiting on my parents' hand and foot, basically. There were 4 of us, so my mum had this mini little army that she would just mobilize. And it was very much a militaristic background. My dad was into the, you know, the theory side of the military stuff as a hobby. He is into wargaming. My brother is into Warhammer severely. But my mum raised us girls as a militaristic unit. Basically, we were expected to be confident in everything. which is horrible because it doesn't give you a chance to fail. It doesn't give you a space to fail safely. And if you failed, you were hazed. So you got the shit kicked out of you. And there was a hell of a lot of pressure on the girls. My brother was, because he had ADHD, it was more of a lost case with my mum. She couldn't control him. He couldn't control himself. So, of course, you know, he was the problem child. And because we were the ones that came after him, we were treated thusly. You know? It's like, you're going to be like him. Anything that's like him, that steps out of line, is going to get his ass kicked. That sort of thing, you know. There's a hell of a lot of pressure on us from her to perform, to get things right the first time. Because if you didn't get it right the first time, you got the crap kicked out of you. So you are going to get it right. Or you are going to get the hose again, right? It puts the lotion on the skin. No, it was a very much an interesting upbringing. So when I got to my mid-20s, I started, you know, thinking back about things that I wanted as a kid. Because you are a kid, but you have to do these grown-up things. And there's no space or room to actually act as a kid. So when I was a kid, I was very quiet and reserved, and I just kept to myself, and I did exactly what people told me to do. I did what my teachers told me to do. There was no stepping out of line. I think the worst punishment I ever got in school was sitting on the bench for chatting during class, and I tell you what, I never did that again. If anything ever went wrong and I had to get called in to like talk to a teacher, I would burst into tears because I knew as soon as I get home I'd get my ass kicked. Even if they didn't bother calling my parents or anything like that. It was just the threat of the idea of my having to deal with my parents. Now my mum, she's built. When I was growing up, she was built. She's still squidgy now, but she's a big fucking woman compared to what we were, and she used to belt the fuck out of us. You imagine this person who's like 3 times the width of you, twice the height, and laying into you. And she's not only just hitting you, she's taking out her anger on you because she's not happy with her life. This I didn't pick up on until I got out of home and I started looking back at the ways my parents had parented me. I'm sitting there going, that wasn't needed, was it? That was just you being angry with yourself and taking it out on us. So it took a lot of healing and forgiving for me to even want to go anywhere near my parents. And there was a large chunk of my 20s where I just wanted nothing to do with them. Because I'm like, I'm out. I don't want to go back to these assholes. I don't want it. I've got myself a second childhood. This is what I'm doing now. It wasn't particularly bad. It wasn't like me running around, you know, drawing on walls and things. But it was a collection of just things I wanted when I was a kid and experiences I wanted to have that I never got a chance to do. I mean, for one point, I actually bought myself a Furby. That was a nightmare. And then I realized why I didn't want one. Because they don't shut up. But it was like, okay, now I've had this experience. I know what it is. I don't want it. But it was, you know, filling gaps with all the things you missed out on. Being able to just go and buy like cake or something, or, you know, you have a particular toy or something you wanted when you were a kid, or you're just hanging out with your friends or things like that. You know, all these things that you missed out on. I know I missed out on hanging out with my friends a lot. I never really got to do sleepovers. I think in my entire life I did 2 sleepovers. And these people were like vetted to make sure. And we were never allowed to mention anything that was happening in the family. So I'm like, okay. I mean, bearing in mind it was abuse that was happening in the family, so it's not exactly going to talk about lightly. These people were vetted. My parents had to know them. There was strict security protocols about that. My mum was convinced we were surrounded by pedophiles. Especially the girls. She's like, don't go out the house, there's pedophiles. It's like, I just want to take the dog for a walk, you're not going. It's like, what? So I didn't actually get out of my house, technically, till I was about 19, unescorted. Even in high school, I used to walk my dog. I used to have to, you know, that was about 18 actually. I was still living with my parents at 18, so I used to start walking the dog, and I'd just go for, because she can't control you when you're 18, apparently. Because you're an adult, seemingly, according to the law. So I said, I'm going taking the dog for a walk, and I just go for hours. I just wander. I'd take the dog and I'd wander, and it was all new to me then, so I could just go for a wander for hours and not have a problem. We lived in suburbia. I mean, it was a rough neighborhood, but, you know, it was still, you know, like houses and parks and things, so I used to love just going for wanders. I still do now. to have the restrictions taken away from you, it was a novel to me at the time. I mean, my friends were going off on their bikes, just going for rides to their friend's house or down to the deli to go get some sweets or something like that. I wasn't allowed to do that because there were security risks, apparently. I'm like, how many pedophiles do you think are in this area? How many are child abductors? I don't know. But apparently we weren't allowed to. I think, honestly, it was more just a control mechanism for my mom. She was a very controlling person. She still is. Now she tries to use guilt instead of physical control. She knows we're too big to control, so she tries to use guilt, but it doesn't work because, there's not much of a relationship there that's a positive one, so there's no obligation to want to help or, it's a weird, horrible experience where you've just created this clusterfuck of no relationship, no sort of allegiance, if it makes sense. So once I got out of home, I gave myself a second childhood. I started doing all the things I wanted to do. And it was a little bit chaotic at the time, not to the point where it's like a downward spiral. And I did come across as a lot childish because I was doing quite deemed immature things for my age group. I know I've got still a whole shitload of stuffed toys I can't seem to get rid of because I got attached. And I've got them on my chest of drawers, and I've got some on the floor, and it's just crazy. And they've all got names and tragic backstories, so I claim it's because I'm a teacher. I was like, oh yeah, that's where I got all those toys, but I can't let them go. I don't know if that's part of the poverty cycle or not. It's like you get these things and you can't let them go. Or maybe I've got some kind of weird abandonment issues, It's like they've all got stories, they're all people that are important to me, I can't let them go. This is how hoarding starts. I can't let this plastic bag go. It's important. I could use it sometime. I love that show though. Hoarders. It's crazy how much mess they make. I couldn't believe it. The whole time I'm sitting there looking at this house going, my mum will kill you. I mean, my parents hoarded because they were poverty based, but my mum was like, you will not make a mess. It's organized. Very militaristic background. Ooh, tree. But it's I gave myself a second childhood. My ex-husband didn't mind it because I semi-infantilized myself. I put myself in the position of child again because I needed to heal that part of me. I never got a chance to be a child, so I gave myself a second childhood. So whilst I was still working as a teacher, as an adult, when it was my downtime, my default is to be childlike. I enjoy that. Parts of me is still childish because of my autism as well. There's some things I will never understand, I don't think. A lot to do with the darker side of life. Things like adultery and stuff like that, how people can justify adultery and things like that. I think that's because I was taught specific ways of doing things and specific levels of morality and things like that. And it was drilled into us violently. So when someone tries to create a grey area, where, some people can justify, I see it as committing adultery. They see it as polygamy. I'm going, I have so much trouble with that. I'm trying to understand it now because I know everyone's different. We all got different values and things like that. But to me, it's like I know the consequences of those actions and I know the physical and emotional pain it will cause, inevitably. So I'm like, why would you do that and try and sugarcoat it as polygamy? I don't understand that. That's part of my childish side of things. It's like I need things clear cut. I have trouble with grey areas, but it could be the autism as well. It could be the fact that I've got trauma-based responses which are drilled into me that tell me this is the rules. I don't know. It comes from all kinds of places. Obviously, I'm a bit biased in certain ways, so I need to take those into consideration as well. Everybody's different. Everybody wants different things, and that's okay. I have to be okay with it. But, it's not for me. That's my response lately as I'm growing older, as my maturity levels are improving. It's like, okay, that's you, that's not for me, but that's you, and that's okay. I'm going to keep telling myself that. That way I don't get frustrated or angry about things that don't seem right or feel right. Anyway. I think I handled my last breakup quite well as well. So I was angry with him. I'm a little bit angry with him. I'm disappointed in him. I've discovered this new word, disappointed. I didn't know what the feeling was. I don't know, again, whether that's because, autism or just I don't understand it, or how you can be disappointed in something. I don't understand it entirely. Again, the cake analogies help. How can I relate this to cake? All right, I'm disappointed that you ate the whole cake and didn't share. It's like, oh, okay, so you feel bad. Okay, okay. Let me just say, that's the thing. Is like, if anyone dates me, they're gonna have to, relate it to cake analogies or something. I don't understand your feelings. Please relate it to a cake analogy, and bring cake while you're at it. How dare you turn up on empty-handed? But no, that's part of my childishness. I admit I have childish qualities. I have childlike qualities, which some people like. My default is to be very childlike. It's very stressful being an adult all the time. Everyone knows that. That's why we're knackered all the time, and everything hurts. It's like, because you've been adulting too long, you've got to go back to finding a relaxed mode to exist in. My relaxed mode is bouncing around, acting like an idiot, and I love doing it. I do come across as childish or childlike, I don't know, depending on which stance you want to take about maturity levels for my age. I'm 37. But you'll find me, like, while I'm reading my book and I'm on the treadmill and I'm bouncing along, listening to the music, and I've got my hair in 2 pigtails and wearing bright pink and a shitload of joy. I'm just bouncing along, having a blast, living my best life. So I don't know if you would consider that childish or childlike. Everybody else in the gym is sitting there like trying to be serious and lifting the heavy weights, and I'm just bopping along. It's like, I don't care. I'm having fun. So, I don't know. It's a strange way to look at it. I mean, there's a very serious approach to life, where you're an adult, you have to be serious. No time for pigtails. Come on. There's no crying in baseball. Come on. I love Tom Hanks. Anyway, but you gotta have some. You're gonna lose your mind. You don't chill a bit, or find a way to vent some of that adult aggression, that frustration, where you're having to follow someone else's rules and nobody else is doing the right thing, and you just it's constant conflict and confusion and frustration, and you're supposed to be doing something, but the tension there, and oh god, the stress of the day is what I call it. Everybody's trying to get the job done. And you've got to find a way to vent. I mean, there's other ways you could do it, more negative ways. You could smoke, you could drink, you could take drugs. Some people are sitting there doing all 3 while on the job, It's probably not the best thing to do as a teacher, but at the same time, they're just trying to cope with this stress that is being an adult. And it is a lot of pressure on adults to perform, because we're expected to be able to be accomplished by a particular age. 18 is usually the adult age. In America, I think it's 21, although they've got this weird drinking, gun ownership thing going on in America. I don't know what the hell they're about. Motorbike. Oh, that's a chunky one. But we're all trying to cope with the pressures of life as an adult, and we're supposed to perform and get the job done. You got to find a way to vent it. And if you don't vent it, you're going to internalize it, and you're just going to explode, and you're going to take that on those around you and do exactly what my dad did, essentially. He's got Peter Pan syndrome. He had a lot of pressure on him to be what is perceived to be an adult, and he just didn't cope, and he took it out on us. From my age at about 8, onwards to about 19. So my formative years of what is deemed normal is stressful as fuck. All the pressure and horrible stuff going on in the home, forced into positions where you're the adult because you haven't got people to rely on as adults, mixed with the stress of trying to get school done, or it's a lot of pressure, and you're still trying to find out who you are and what you want, dealing with the violence and shit that goes on in the home. It's an interesting amount of pressure. So I became an adult quite early. I didn't want to be. I don't think anyone wants to be. I was looking around at my friends going, why don't you have to do all this shit? Which I found frustrating at times. I mean, I look back now, and to be honest, it's partly a blessing, because I was thrust into this environment where, the things I do now, I do as second nature. I've got some people who, like my ex-boyfriend who's 40, who still doesn't understand how to exist as a perceived adult, right? He doesn't know the basic living things I was doing when I was 10, he can't do now. So it's fascinating to watch. I'm going, why don't you know this? Why don't you know this? And then you think, no, wait a minute, I know why I know this. It's not the same environment. These people have had very lax childhoods and 20s and teens, and you're sitting there going, okay. So in a way, it was a blessing to be thrust into these kinds of circumstances and behaviors. At the time, you think it's a curse, obviously, but at the same, as you get older, you're like, I'm glad I kind of learned that stuff. I know now how to do that, and I can do it second nature, and it's not a problem. My ex-boyfriend is 40, still doesn't have a license, doesn't really know how to look after himself. He's still living the life of a 17-year-old kid, as far as I can see. That kind of lifestyle I saw with the 17-year-old guy as I was living, well, I wasn't living with them, but I was hanging around with in high school. I'm saying, you don't know how to do your own food shopping, you don't know how to clean your own house, you don't know how to maintain hygiene, things like this. I'm going, what the fuck, dude? My mum would have killed you. It's fascinating. I don't know if I would have taken it to the extreme parenting method that my mum did. I'm sure there's like a nice happy mid-ground where you teach a child how to exist as an adult without, being militaristic about it. It was seriously a lot of hazing. It's like a lot of aggressive hazing, and you sit there and think, I'm a kid, man. I'm not even 18. I can't even join the army. How are you doing this to me at this age? I don't know. Oh, it's fascinating. But you get it young. I suppose you take it as an adult, develop it as an adult. It's a blessing, but it's also a curse. I question what age we should start doing this, but my mum started at 5. So I don't know what her upbringing was like. I know she came from a messed up background herself, so maybe she was just prepping us for the shit fight that was coming. I don't know. So what can we take away from that? Basically, it's okay to be childlike. You got to find a way to de-vent. I've got my kids right now that I'm teaching in the classroom, and I like that they're having a childhood. I do. I know some of them are coming from trauma backgrounds. A lot of them are actually, considering the work area I work in. It's low SES, there's a lot of poverty, there's a lot of drug abuse and things like that. And I'm looking at these kids and I'm going, I could take you home. I really could. If I could, I'd take you home and I'd give you what you need. But, I don't want you to have this kind of a lifestyle, because you're dealing with a lot of adult stuff. Like, if I had a kid, I wouldn't even take it to a bar or anything. I wouldn't be drinking around it. I wouldn't be, I don't drink myself now because of the background I come from. I've never taken drugs. My parents didn't take drugs, but at the same time they were still abusive. So I know there are certain things I could never do to a kid, because I know what it feels like to be on the receiving end of that. It's just not in me to do it. I'm so adverse to it. So I found it fascinating when my mum was doing it to us, claiming that she came from a similar background, right? It's like, but this hurts, why would you pass that on? It doesn't make sense. It hurts. It's like, I never understood that. Which is why I find it fascinating that my brother is really soft with his kids. And my older sister she's not as strict as my mum, because again, she was given that rough, aggressive, militaristic background. My younger sister went off the handle. She just went like, fuck this, I'm going to England. Like, I'm leaving all this shit. She did what we call doing an Aunt Pat. My Aunt Pat eloped to Switzerland with a guy called Renato. And we haven't heard from her since. She's got 2 kids, apparently. But that was, oh Christ, she must be in her 80s now. Must be. I like Aunt Pat. She's awesome. She's part of the gypsy side of our family, for sure. She definitely takes after my grandma. She just went, fuck this. I'm jealous. I take more after... I kind of got my grandma in me, but I take after my granddad Fred. He's slow and steady. I tend to stick with things despite them being painfully stupid, like my ex-husband. But I envy Aunt Pat. It's like we're all thinking, oh, she just ran away. But we're all also thinking, holy shit, she's got balls. I love her. I want to do that. I want to reload. But it's cool. She's a badass, as far as I'm concerned. In terms of our family and sitting and taking abuse and shit from people we either marry or are related to, I'd want to, if I get the chance, I'd fucking load. I've got the chance now if I want to, because I'm single, but at the same time I'm like, I don't know. I'm a bit chicken shit, I don't know. I'm waiting for my handsome man to come and sweep me off my feet, right? My tall, dark and handsome. I'd call it Mr. Darcy, but he's very emotionally unavailable, so I don't know if I'm appealing. I don't know if it's very appealing. Ooh, Mustang. Fuckers. It's not vintage though, so fuck you. Vintage counts. Vintage is the bomb. So, childlike. Like Yeah, the perks of being divorced, I have to say, is that I can be childlike now and not have the responsibility of kids or anything like that. I know I had 2 miscarriages and I was bummed about it at the time. That's an understatement. Nearly caused a fucking crisis. And I still haven't coped with that, to be honest. I know I've got mental issues because of that, but it's dulled compared to what it was. But I haven't got any kids, and I've got a proper income, and I'm divorced, so I don't have any husband to worry about to have to take into consideration. I've got my freedom, so I can just be childlike if I wanted to. I could just hang around, buy useless crap that I wanted when I was younger, or have, experiences like I wanted to do when I was a kid, and I've got the freedom to do it. So there are perks to it. I mean, lots of people are saying, well, I keep getting people in my age group saying, don't you want kids? I'm going, no. Why would I want the kids when I can be the kids? and people look down on you for that. It's like, you can't, you're immature. It's like, no, I just opted for a better option. But I didn't want the kids. That's a lot of mess and stress and fuss, and I've already had like half my life fucked up. So actually more than half my life, because I've only had my freedom for a couple of years now. If it wasn't ex-husbands, it was ex-boyfriends, it was fucking family. So, so when I was 33, not even that really. 33, I still ran into my now ex-boyfriend, so I keep doing it to myself. But, once you get your freedom, you don't tend to want to go back. And I find a lot of people that are locked into those positions where they've had kids, they get pissy with anyone who hasn't done the same, because it's like, why do we have to take the brunt of this when you're just like freeballing it? It's like, well, I by chance lost my kids. By chance. It was a miscarriage. There was nothing I could do. So, in that sense, I think fate intervened, really, because I was with this horrible guy. And it was probably a godsend. And people say, oh, miscarriages are horrible, it's horrible. I was like, I don't know. If you'd have met the guy I'd fallen pregnant to, and if you'd known me as the kind of person that would have stuck with him anyway, because of the kids, the circumstances would have been tragic if they had survived, because they would have had a lot of shit done to them as well. And I'm worried that I'd turn out like my mum, to be honest, because my mum was fucking ruthless. I'm put in that position, I'm worried that I wouldn't turn into her, because there's a lot of stress, and I've already got a traumatic background, so it's like I don't want to do that. I don't want to inflict that or put that energy out to the world, because I know if I don't have kids, then at least it stops with me, right? And it sounds a bit tragic, really, but I don't know. You think about it, swings and roundabouts, it's for the best, really. I mean, I have maternal instincts. I had a dream the other day where I had a baby. I'm going, what the fuck is it? But I instantly knew what to do, which I found fascinating. It was like just second nature. So I know what to do if I did have a kid, like a baby. Not a problem. And I've got nieces, and I've got another nephew on the way. So I've got experience with it. I've raised other people's kids. That's what I do as a teacher, essentially. You wish it was just reading and writing. You're actually a surrogate parent most of the time. So I'm not missing out on anything. It's not like me being childish or childlike as a result of, some horrible backstory. I mean, these events aren't great, but it's a blessing, I suppose. You have to see it from a different perspective. If I had wanted kids, if I had gone out of my way to have IVF and things like that, I'd invested so much energy and everything like that, then it would be a tragic backstory. But to be honest, I was in a shit situation with a guy who was a prick and I wasn't ready. I was only 22. No, I was 23. It was 2006, 2008. So I wasn't ready in any way. I didn't have any kind of firm foundation to raise kids with. I didn't have, I wasn't married. I was engaged, but I wasn't married. I would want to be married. You want that security. So the kids are protected. If some shit does go awry in the relationship, your kids are protected. I wasn't ready. I didn't have everything I needed. And looking back now, and I'm older now, I'm sitting there going, I didn't want kids in the first place. It would have been thrown into the deep end in a situation that wouldn't have been optimal anyway. And I would have been reliving what happened to my parents, essentially getting stuck with a guy who was irresponsible, Peter Pan syndrome, and it would be my mum all over again, I think. So I'm happy that happened. It sounds horrible, doesn't it? I'm happy that happened. I'm happy that circumstances changed. I'm not happy. And you know what, with like my belief systems, I'm sure these little babies, as amazing as they would have been, just got reassigned to someone else. That's, you know, I'm hoping they got sent to some other better situation, you know, reincarnation and all that, right? It's like, this would have been shit. I'm giving you a better deal. Here you go in this family. You know, here's a celebrity. They've got millions of dollars and they actually want kids. I don't know. But I would have hoped for 2 boys, I think. I don't know. I lived with girls. I know it's a bit of a nightmare. Although boys could be worse, right? I don't know. So yeah. So now I get a second opportunity. I do. At being childlike and childish. I do need to work on my childish stuff. I do. I can be petty. I know everyone's got to be petty. It's all right to be petty. These are natural behavioral instincts. These are unhealed traumas from childhood. This is reactions that you haven't dealt with or been told or reasoned out that it's not the best reaction to have. Everybody has them. Don't feel bad for having childish antics. Just don't let them control your life, right? Don't be petty all the time. Or in a way that's so big that it might negatively impact your life. Like I was nearly made homeless a second time. Like in May on my birthday would have been me getting evicted. This year actually, fuck, okay. I'm losing track of time. But because my ex-boyfriend was being petty and he was giving me the stonewalling treatment and he had control of all the rental, I want to say intel, but it's not, it's emails and stuff like that. I had no idea that we were getting evicted. And because he was stonewalling me, he wasn't going to tell me either. You know, he wanted control of the situation. He gives me the silent treatment until I come and talk to him. So eventually I had to come and talk to him because I had this gut feeling that something was going wrong. Oh, God, divine intervention or what? But, you know, it's that level of pettiness that would have resulted in me being homeless again. And I've already done it once, and I don't want to be that kind of person who, you know, is that bloody petty. It's not nice. It's cruel, that. And I've still got issues with him about that kind of thing, stonewalling, that kind of stuff. So you don't want to be that kind of a person. You don't want to perpetuate that kind of mentality or a lifestyle choice. Find a way. I need to find a way to overcome that kind of shit. I mean, and you do get fed up with people, and I do tend to go quiet. I don't know if it's, you know, like selective mutism, or if it's just like trauma response to just shut down, or if it's me being just so angry I can't handle dealing with that person. But I do tend to want to be isolated and quiet when I'm angry. I want to be alone. I just want to be alone, because if I don't be alone, I'm going to hurt someone, you know, and I think we've all been there. So it's forgivable. Of course, I'm a bit biased there. But, you know, behaviours that are that petty are not great. You want to find some kind of holistic approach to dealing with people. You want to, you know, keep it warm and friendly. I mean, we're all human. We've all got flaws. You can't let this shit take over your life where you become nasty and bitter and you know. And at the same time, you still want to promote like a childlike quality where you're relaxed and you can overcome traumas and horrible experiences by promoting some kind of innocence, okay? Again, bearing in mind that we're all human. Like, none of us are fully fledged so-called adults. We're all just children that got bigger. Yeah, you're never going to grow up. You're never actually an adult. The idea of adult is a construct. There's never an adult. That's why so many different cultures have different ages at which people are perceived to be adults. No one ever is an adult. You can be childlike. Childish is probably not the best option because it's counterintuitive, but at the same time, you know, not a problem either. We're still human. We've still got flaws. Right, I'm going to have to leave it there though, because it is Wednesday, 7:52, and I've got to walk into a classroom. So I'm hoping you have a fantastic Wednesday, guys, okay? We're all dealing with our own life journeys. Don't take it seriously. Don't stress about not getting things right. It's going to be okay, all right? I hope you have a fantastic Wednesday. I'm going to do another podcast on the way home because I've just figured out how to use Movie Maker or whatever it is. And that's the reason why my podcast is so late, because they've just reset the format of that platform. So I'm like, no, I need to learn this one. Okay, so take it easy and I'll see you on the way back.